Hi, good morning. I'm not a physician, so I'm not going to speak about medical issues here. My research is in the area of alliances, partnerships, collaboration, and such. And that's what I want to speak about. If you can go to the next slide, please. Oh, no, I do that. Okay. This is basically the outline that I'm going to use today, but I'm reminded of when my younger was very young and learning algebra. She was sitting at the kitchen table, pitching and moaning about how hard it was, and her mom said, "Why don't you ask your dad? He's a college professor." And her response was, "I don't want to know that much about it," because I would have started with the invention of zero and why you can't use Roman numerals to do math. But be that as it may, what I'd ask is that you do is indulge me for the next 15 minutes. So that's what I'm going to talk about. This is a slide that I use when I work with organizations. I'm usually asked to come in when their alliance is not working well. And I'll sit them in a room, one firm on one side, the other on the other side, and I'll ask the question. I say, "Partner, what do you say?" And invariably, if they've run into difficulties, they're not defining the word the same way. So that is an issue that we need to deal with. Much of my outside work is with aerospace. I work with NASA, or I have worked with NASA, and telecom as well. So when you think about an alliance, you're managing three separate things. You're managing the enterprise, the value that each one would assess the other one has. You're managing a relationship, and you're managing the spirit of that relationship. When I speak about the spirit of the relationship, I'm speaking about the social contract that we each use when we get involved in the relationship. Now, the enterprise level discussion may be that the value is there for the companies. They'll each make a lot of money. But if you are not aligned on the spirit or the relationship, I'd walk away from the deal, because that's where much of the issues arise. Okay. There are three words here that I use simultaneously, or I use interchangeably. One is collaboration, the other is partnership. Now I'm using that in the non-legal sense of the term, because legally I take on your liabilities, and that's not what I'm speaking about here. So if I'm using alliance, collaboration, and partnership interchangeably, you'll understand why. I don't know. I'm not responsible for the first statement up there. I wish I was. But what you find is, if you're searching for oil in the North Sea, the assets of all the companies that will arise together, you're looking at oil firms, you're looking at the guys who make the platforms, you're looking at guys who make the hole in the earth, etc. You're looking at organizations that are very, very large. In fact, many of them exceed the GNP of small European nations. What we find is that there are certain skills that will be needed managing these aspects moving into the next several years. One of those is that you must be very adept at collaboration, because if you're not, you will fail. If you look at the aerospace industry, for example, the folks in Seattle, the Boeing organization is no longer a manufacturer of airplanes, it's an assembler of airplanes. So the skills that are needed are ones of understanding how to partner and make that happen intelligently. In fact, I worked with them for several years, helping them become more alliance-like or alliance-facile in how they manage their partnerships. And let me say that their knuckles rub when they walk. They are not very adept at being a good partner, because what happens is that if you are out of a world where command and control is the main operating mechanism that you use, you can't control what you don't own. So alliances are out of your realm of understanding and lead to difficulty. Now, what I have here is a slide that shows what the meaning of alliances are. But what I'd like to do is focus on open-ended contracts between separate firms with shared governance. What I mean here is that the world is uncertain, therefore it's impossible to write a specific contract that will handle every exigency or contingency that arises. In fact, the only state in the Union that uses Napoleonic code is Louisiana. There's other things we could talk about Louisiana, but let's just limit ourselves to, I hope there's nobody here from Louisiana, but let's just limit ourselves to the fact that Anglo-Saxon law, which establishes mechanisms for dealing with issues, becomes important. Separate organizations. In an alliance, each organization maintains its separateness, its independence, its autonomy, and the default option is to protect one's own self-interest. So you can look at alliances as being very hard to manage. Shared governance has to do with the fact that we don't like to share decision-making with other folks in our own organization, let alone folks in separate organizations. Now, this extends the definition I had earlier, but let me just highlight some of the issues here. One is that the goals do not have to be the same, but they have to be compatible. I need to be able to accomplish my goals. You need to be able to accomplish yours. So we don't have to have the same goals, but they need to be compatible. The second issue is that we do not use substitutable assets because I don't need you for substitutable kinds of assets. We should complement one another when we are involved in these alliances. The third issue deals with the fact that we speak about alliances as being equal partners. Well, you don't have to be equal, you need to be equitable. Meaning if I put 15% into that alliance, I should expect 15% out, no more, no less. When I work with organizations and ask them, what are you looking for out of an alliance? Much of them will just look at what is their advantage, not look at what the advantage is for their partner. This is the implications of the definition that I spoke about earlier. There's a sense of interdependence, meaning that we are in this together. Why would I hurt you because hurting you hurts me? That makes no sense at all. So there's no reason for us to act opportunistically. The second relates to a notion that I raised earlier, the issue of everybody has to gain. If only I am advantaged, the alliance will not work because we each have to have something that we can benefit from out of these relationships. I'll skip that. Now, in an earlier life, I was a biologist. When I say that to my yoga instructor, she thinks reincarnation. I'm talking about my undergraduate education. And if the genus is strategic alliances and the species are, well, if you look at mammals, for example, substituting mammals in this slide, you have humans, whales, horses, etc. Most of the time they don't look the same, but there are certain characteristics that they each share. If we're looking at mammals, they suckle their young, they have hair, etc. When you look at alliances, I have a very wide net under which alliances may exist, from joint ventures all the way up to loosely aligned organizations. But these are the characteristics that all alliances must have to varying degrees. I spoke about the notion of compatibility of goals. Our goals don't have to be the same, but they have to be compatible. Recognized interdependence. Why would I hurt you? Because hurting you hurts me, etc. But the notion of symmetry becomes important here, because if you're looking for being equal at any moment over our relationship, that's not going to happen, because the advantages will ebb and flow over that relationship. What we're looking for is, over the time of that alliance, we each will receive the benefit that we sought. If you're not, you're in the wrong relationship, and I'd exit very quickly. Innovation is very essential for most organizations. There are 5 competencies that one might look at. One of them is empowerment, and since I only have a minute and a half, let me share with you my favorite empowerment story. A colleague of mine checks in to a hotel, and the man at the desk is wearing an "I'm empowered" button. And my colleague asked, "May I have your button? Because I'm a management professor at the University of Virginia. I'd love to have your button." His response was, "I don't know, I have to ask my supervisor." So much for being empowered. But it's knowledge sharing, which is one of the things that was spoken about earlier this morning. The last speaker spoke about sharing of information and the like. The other competencies we need not spend moments on, but if you look at the world in which we operate, life is getting so complex. This is a slide from IBM, one of my authors. If you look at how fast or how slow televisions disseminated within the population and compare that with the internet, things just happen very, very fast. Now, if you look at sources of new ideas and such, notice that one's business relationships are a source of information for innovation. Now, if you look at the automobile industry, Honda has received many, many new notions from its suppliers. General Motors, or the old General Motors, used to have a reputation of, I haven't met a supplier who I'm not able to beat up. They would look at anybody else before they went to General Motors. Let me move on. I spoke about the reason for collaboration. The world is uncertain. Things are changing at a very fast rate. The reasons for collaboration are listed there. You can read that much faster than I can talk about it. But if you don't collaborate, you will suboptimize your innovations, and that's not a smart thing to do. Let me move on. The good, the bad, and the ugly. If anybody wants to sing this theme song, you're welcome to do that. But on the left is the reasons why we engage in alliances. On the right are the reasons for why alliances will fail. If you remember the old Pogo cartoon where he says, I've met the enemy and it is us. Management is responsible for alliances failing. Understanding failure a little bit more. Differences in the culture of organizations, national as well as the corporate culture. In fact, when NYNEX and Bell Atlantic merged, one of the companies no longer existed. NYNEX no longer existed. It became Bell Atlantic. It's now Horizon. The corporate cultures was like merging the Huns with the Roman legions. It just was not working out very well. Objectives are not compatible. You need to understand that walking in. Changing the business model. We worked with US Air and British Air when they merged years ago, or the failed merger between them. And about a year and a half later, the folks from British Air shared with us information that they had on US Air and said, it's a good thing that this relationship did not work because culturally we were not the same organization. Okay. Despite the need for collaboration, over 60% of them fail. That's about what marriages are. 50 to 60% of them fail. The barriers to innovation are the following: impact of indirect ties, meaning A may have a relationship with C, and C may have a relationship with F. A to C and C to F is a direct relationship. What happens is it's the indirect relationship between A and F where there'll be leakage of information. In fact, there's a ratio of unintended information to intended information. If that ratio is more than 1, you have problems. In fact, it's all right to go into a relationship and say, you can ask about this, but don't ask about that. If you let it be known early on, that's okay. If you don't mention it at the start of the alliance, you're going to set up roadblocks and things are likely to fail. Let me move on. The governance, okay. Issues to consider and why collaborative success happens. One, the length of time that we may have a relationship is not a very strong measure of success, because I may have an alliance that lasts for 15 years because that's the nature of the industry I'm in. You may have an alliance that lasts for 15 months. For example, in Silicon Valley, I've heard them say, you know your alliance is over when your partner stops returning your emails. You know, so you've got a femtosecond for those relationships to last. Second, if there are no objectives stated, how do you know whether your alliance has been successful or not? Outcomes must benefit everybody. Do not look for matching at any moment in time. As I said earlier, over time, we should equal or be equitable. But at any moment in time, I'll be advantaged, you'll be advantaged. Issues related to knowledge, that's the unintended versus intended information. Think about small wins. Do not start with world hunger first, you know, because there's a learning that must happen here. And if you work on world hunger first, you're going to run into problems. Learning is a legitimate outcome of an alliance. Imagine you walk in to your manager's office and she asks you, how's the alliance? You say, well, we're over budget. We're running out of moments here. And then you say, but we're learning a lot. And if her response is, don't let the door hit you on the way out, that is not an organization that will be very friendly for managing alliances. Complementary skills such as A may have market access, B may have certain technology. You can receive advantages by just having A and B work together, but the real advantage happens with A plus B plus A times B, where I'm able to leverage the skills of the partner, which will lead into a competitive advantage. I'm well over time. I'm sorry about that. I thank you for your time.